Hey everybody, welcome to the show. So, a lot of you have been asking for some sort of person, people, entities, or adjacent for you to be able to air your grievances to, for somebody to be the voice of the community, hint, hint, nudge, nudge. And we are very proud to say that we have finally found some community managers. And of course, since they are going to be interacting with you a lot, I figured, why not bring the head honcho onto the podcast and have him tell the story, introduce himself, and, as is per usual, endear himself to you guys. So, Thor, say hi.
What an introduction. Hi, everybody.
It's my radio voice.
I love this. Hi, everybody. So happy to be here.
Hell yes. So, can you just give your title, what you do?
Yeah, so, all right. I have the honor of being the senior community manager, and I will be here to manage. Is just a weird word, right? I'm not actually here to manage the community, but I'm here to help the community, right? Mm-hmm. Assist the community.
Yeah.
But it's called community manager, and I'm looking so much forward to it.
Hell yes. So, the title of community manager, at least in the sense of Ember Sword, entails a lot of just, you know, wearing different hats, having different skills. And you were incredibly qualified for the position. Can you tell everybody what your background is?
Again, what an introduction. Thank you. So let's split it up into two things, because I really like to approach my background both for the, I guess, boring academic side, but also from the autodidact side, which has some very important aspects for me that I use in my work life. But I guess academics are in order. I have a bachelor degree in meteorology, which for those who don't know it is kind of like an introduction to all kinds of technical stuff, like some bit of programming, bit of audio design, bit of animation, a bit of everything, and then you choose a master's degree and focus on something. Well, I didn't do that. So, because why follow the system? So I chose another master's degree and focused on communication and product management, because I found out that's the path in game development that I wanted to pursue, right? So, and I'm very happy for that. But I had to apply for the special education, and for like a couple of months I didn't know if I was actually getting in, and I thought, have I ruined my education? But hey, it all worked out, right?
Thankfully.
It all worked out, yeah. Then I love project management. I love structure. I also love creative and chaos, but we'll find that out later. But I love structure, so let's talk about that for now. And I've taken courses in stuff like alignment and conflict handling, de-escalation stuff. They always have fancy words like active listening and fierce feedback and stuff. And
nice.
It's fancy names. I like talking to people and like communicating, and it's yeah. I've had some experience in communities before, and it actually took some time for me once I started out being community managers at another game company, that I actually had a lot of experience in working with communities before, because it was kind of camouflaged in some of my earlier jobs, even from a young age. And it could be book clubs, it could be live role-playing, it could be pen and paper, but I've actually had to do with communities from a very young age. So while there was a lot of new things for me in my first community management job, there was also a lot of things I could use. I've been a bit in HR, in recruiting, in other parts of game development. There was a point of my life where I thought I was going to be a game designer, but that wasn't really me. So
Understandable,
yeah. It was kind of natural for me to think, hey, I like writing, I like creating worlds, I should be a game designer. And then I found out that's not necessarily the same at all.
I've had a lot of friends who've gone into that with the exact same mentality, and it just almost always pans out the same way. It's just a weird expectation versus reality type of thing. You have had extensive community manager or community management experience. Can you talk about a little bit about what those communities were like, how they stack up against our community here at Ember Sword?
Yeah. So I would say, based on my initial experience and approach from Ember Sword, which have been none less than amazing, by the way, and so nice introductions.
Thank you.
Nice community. It's wonderful what have already been accomplished there. A wonderful foundation that's been made, but it seems that the community is older, and not necessarily experience-wise, but older, older players, older community members than what I'm used to, but I take that as an advantage, not a disadvantage. They seem, and that's nothing harshly on my previous community, but they seem a little bit more mature on some aspects. But it's also a more mature world, that of Ember Sword, compared to the games I've been on. Right, so it's some other aspects that game is tackling. So it makes sense it's a more mature community. But there's also the usual things like memes and humor.
Most of them featuring my face, which thanks to everybody for that.
I see that.
I'm very happy for the pet rock, which overtook everything for like 2 weeks, and I had a breather.
Yeah, I think there's the "Hey you," which I finally understood once I got to the end of a podcast, right? Hi you, yeah. And then there's the hydrating one. I think that have gotten thrown in. Yeah.
I mean, as far as memes go, this is the healthiest one I've seen in a while. So like, I'll take it. Props to yours for having the world's hugest water jug.
But there are some experience I'm taking with me, and with any things in life now. And I'm getting deep. There's some good and bad experiences, right? Some dark and some fond memories. I'm also bringing with me some experiences of what not to do. Some memories of failures. Some on my side, some on other sides. That's how it goes. But things I would like, pitfalls I would like not to fall into. Because I actually love mistakes, but I don't like making them twice, right? So
yeah, of course.
Then it's getting kind of repetitive, falling into the same pitfall.
It is a very healthy mentality to have. I mean, failure is how we learn as a species, so accepting that notion is one of the first steps towards improving oneself. Now it's getting deep.
You great doubling down there. It's the same, right? In competition, I hate being defeated, but sometimes defeats like what is the saying? Lose the battle, win the war, or something like that. Yeah. I like that saying. Sometimes you have to be defeated, and you have to learn from it. And sometimes in life you are lucky that you are in a context or position where you can actually get defeated or lose something, but you don't lose as much as you win from that, right? So there are times in life where you can actually afford to take some beatings, to fall down in the dirt and learn from it. So I'm approaching Ember Sword with a lot of things I don't want to do. A lot of things I don't want to do again, but also approaching with a lot of fond memories of what worked, and what I also hope will help this community.
Hell yes. Well, I feel like I almost skipped a step here, but how did you come to work on Ember Sword?
All right, so it's actually, I guess it's not a long story, but it's a funny little story.
We got time.
It's fun. It's funny how like things just happen, right? You have all these ideas of what you're gonna do with your life, and then like for example, I wanted for a long time to be a lawyer. Yes. So you have all these ideas, right? I also studied another education before I jumped on meteorology. So you have all these ideas, and then almost accidentally, depending on what you believe in destiny and stuff, things just happen, right?
Don't say destiny; it's a trigger word for me. I've had 800 hours in that goddamn game.
Oh, okay. Well, let's approach it like the Hobbit. Like sometimes a wizard just knocks on your door, and basically it's a binary thing, right? No or yes to adventure. And this time I said yes to adventure. But let's begin at the beginning. So at my previous job, in the Danish game development scene, it's pretty small, right, compared to other countries. And sometimes they have a lot of internal dynamics with loaning people to other companies and doing stuff when there's not enough stuff internally to do. And I had some part-time contract with actually I guess let's call it the business/communal park where we have our one of our Danish offices in. I actually did some work for them because they wanted focus on esports. And I did some work for them in analyzing esports in that particular city, the second biggest city in Denmark, called Aarhus. Analyzing the esports scene there, trying to dig up the community there and community build some esport and some potential focus from the city into esports, perhaps even combining it with game development and stuff, which we could need more focus on in that city in Denmark. Which, big surprise, is a city I live close by and has been a big part of. So it means a lot to me also intrinsically. And that's why I got introduced to Brightstar Studios, to Sven actually, I believe it was initially. Yeah, I could sense a grand adventure, and I was suggested multiple times by contacts I had to apply for this job, and I ended up applying, and I'm very happy for that.
Me too, for what it's worth.
Thank you. So I could just sense this grand adventure, and at the time it felt like a gamble, because I was a place that I actually have, I really loved, and I have a special place for in my heart still. So I didn't leave with slamming the door or anything. Also, I don't like slamming the door in first place, because I always say slamming the door is easier than opening the door, right? But I could sense something grand, and as we had the meetings, I could just feel like this was a place for me, and I haven't regretted that since. So actually, it's been more enhanced.
Hell yes, points for us. I mean, a little bit of decent human interaction goes a long way. That's what I'm getting away from this. So I'm really happy that you found Brightstar Studios and just the Ember Sword community at large to be a welcoming experience. Speaking of, I'm the king of segues, dude.
The bridging.
Usually this is where, since we mostly have the developers on the show, this is where I ask them about their vision for the game is. However, I'm going to ask one of the most important questions probably in the history of the podcast, since this is, you are community facing and the community listens to this, and you are in charge of that in a weird Ouroboros-like cycle. What is your vision for the community?
Oh well. I have a lot of visions, but I'm still getting onboarded, right? So some of the things are being a little vague, also because I have pending meetings, and I am the type of person, I don't necessarily go slow. It's not the turtle versus the rabbit thing. I like to think of, I go slow until I'm ready to go fast, and then I go fast. And right now I'm going slow purposely because I have some pending meetings, and I don't want to be the guy that comes in kicking in the door saying, "Hey, FBI is here, change all this stuff." Sorry. But I want to approach it like, I don't want to ruin the foundation that attracted me to this community to begin with. I want to build on top of it, right? So, but some of the things I can say is, it also fits very well with some of the design principles that I know people working on the community before me has made. But I want this community obviously to grow immensely. Like, we need to break down walls, break down borders and limits, because that seems what Brightstar do, right? And we, if we can find a path, we'll make a path. So we'll grow into the unknown and reach for the stars. But it's very important for me that we don't lose what's already there, right? We don't lose the small communities within the big communities. We don't lose what was originally there, what attracted the original players, the original community members. So I'll be looking a lot at how to grow and don't lose what we are while we grow. And find places for this big community and then small pocket communities within the big community, which is some of the things I really like about communities, but Discord in general, that you can have these small pockets within the major scope.
That's commendable. I have been wondering about that particular thing myself, since we are on track to have just exponential growth. So it's awesome that you're already thinking about how to, one, manage that, and two, keep the feeling the same, since one of the things that I just love the most about the community is truly this feeling of togetherness that we've fostered, which for a community of, like, as of there's this recording, 50,000 people and growing, is crazy to me. How just awesome the discourse continues to be. Well, you did mention that you are still in the process of learning. In regards to that, I guess, what is the biggest area related to your role that you were curious about, and why?
Can I add something before I reply to that?
Of course.
Yeah, of course. Wonderful. Because I would also say, like, these 4 factions and this Fanabus Cup and these amazing Hogwarts, like Harry Potter, like, but still being original to Ember Sword. It doesn't feel like it's just that, but these 4 factions and the magic around them is something that drawn me, like that really drew on me in the beginning, and it's something I really want to work with. And even though I have chosen a faction, which maybe can be something for another time, I feel this magical drawing from all the factions and for Fanibus as a whole, and I really want to work with these 4 factions, because I think that's also in some aspects unique to Discord communities, because it's not just guilds, it's much bigger than that. So that's also something I want to lean on heavily, because I really like this idea and this Hogwarts-like feeling of this cup and these factions battling together. But yeah, some of the main things I approach this job title with is storytelling, and it goes back to one of my autodidact aspects of work life, which is my writing. And I have written and been so fortunate to also have published some Danish fantasy books. And I started in a very young age writing, and storytelling is something I try to fuse into whatever I do. And community management is also a part of these things. And I'm already diving into the lore, and with the rest of my team, we are trying to live and breathe in Fanibus. Because if we can do that, if I can imagine myself living and breathing there, I'll be able to help others do the same. And I don't necessarily want it to feel like you have... When you don't play the game anymore, it's to still feel like Fanibus. And community managers can enable this by throwing in little subtle things, storytelling, maybe just ways of introducing yourself or addressing people. I like storytelling. I'll end it there. So that's storytelling for me, is that big thing.
Nice. And apropos of that, you did mention diving into lore a bit. What are some of the things you're researching the most right now?
So I like characters. I like diving into characters because characters for me is some of the most fundamental. Like, if you understand the characters, you understand most of the story usually. But I have actually spent a lot of the time right now just trying to get a grasp on this massive history that goes on to Fanibus. And obviously I'm not going to say anything because I don't know what I can say. But right now I'm focusing on the grander scheme of things. Like why has this happened? Why did it happen? All the big double why questions, right? Like why, how, what... and I've been writing to the law responsible person because I couldn't wait. So before I was formally introduced, I was like asking him all these questions, and luckily he approached that very well. I was hoping I wasn't nagging him. I had all these questions, but I'm actually getting into the persons now because understanding the persons is the doubt over the why. It's the true comprehension and attunement to the story.
If it wasn't immediately obvious that you're a good fit for the job, you essentially approach storytelling the same way that Sam, our narrative designer, does. In the multiple podcasts I've done on the lore with him, his main just driving motivator to create the story is the characters. He creates the story from the characters up, right? And it's a tidbit. Yeah, it's a tidbit I really just love reminding people of. He has pages upon pages about every single character in the game, including a sea creature that lives in Solarwood. That's how deep he's gotten into it. So like,
I haven't found that one yet. I'm gonna find that one.
a little bit of guidance for you, but yeah, it's awesome that your mentality is the same. That really just means that the synergy is already there and your mindset is completely in the right place. Well, that is most of the Ember Sword questions I have, if not all of them. Now we get into the freeballing section of the podcast, which is always just a pure delight for me and I assume the listeners. This is where we learn a bit more about your gaming habits, since, gaming company and all that. Let's start with... No pressure, you're just going to be under massive scrutiny from now on.
Of course.
So let's start with...
I try to conduct myself accordingly.
Let's start with your top 3 favorite games.
Oh no. It's so hard to compile these lists, right? Because there are games who have meant a lot of you in the past, who still means something to you, but it's a list that's changing, right, in some way. I guess for some people it might not be changing actually. So I have some games that like are maybe honorary members of this list, but isn't on there anymore, especially because I've been involved in esports, and there are some of the games there that I don't put on this list, but obviously they mean a lot to me because I've spent an ocean of time there, which cannot be refunded, and I don't want it refunded. So, but they're not on the list. So the list is actually, I guess, I hope saying a lot about me as a person. It's great RPGs with a lot of story, and it's first of all Witcher 3: The Wild Hunt.
Nice.
And I don't know, like that's probably not a surprise for a lot of people, but it's a wonderful game, and for me it's a perfect end result of what a wonderful game for me it is. Music, artistic wise, quest wise, story wise, even combat wise. So for me that was
Do you remember what build you went with?
The first build I went was the Gwent build. I'm just kidding. I went into the game and I found out that there was Gwent, and I got sidetracked. But my build was for a lot of hours.
You were like Gambit. You threw cards at people, I would assume.
Yeah, I actually I continued through the game to find more players I could beat in Gwent. So I was like, so the NPCs was like, hey, we have this time before the great ambush. We might play a game of Gwent, and I'm like, I'm actually here to play a game of Gwent. I don't care about the ambush. But let's just play. But sign build. It was my first build, sign build. I love Magic, and my first build, while also playing on not extreme difficulty, was sign build.
Nice.
Now I'm curious. What was yours? Reverse questions.
The exact same. Again with synergy. I started with signs, and then I went through the entire base game with that. And then, since some friends of mine bought it for me, what was it, late 2017 for my birthday, I had the Game of the Year edition, right? So it had Hearts of Stone and Blood and Wine. Yeah. And for the DLCs, I figured I would mix it up. And I talked to one of my friends, and he said, make the Buzzsaw build. What is the Buzzsaw build? Spec super hard into that Whirlwind melee attack.
Yeah.
And just dump the rest into potions.
Oh
so I was a potion chugging, blade oil applying, just tornado maniac of death, and it never got boring to the point where I had to just tone it down a bit and invest into some other melee combat skills because Hearts of Stone is one of the best narratives I've ever seen, and I kept ruining the narrative because like an incredible cutscene would happen, and then I just spin to win like 10 seconds after.
Yeah, I was just about to say spin to win.
I just started chuckling like an idiot. So I had to tone that down. I have not played it a second time yet since God forbid, I have Xbox Game Pass and every single video game in the world is on there. So I just keep playing new stuff and I can't go back to the backlog.
I'm actually doing that build right now, and that's the spin to win build, and that's my third build. But my second build was Alchemy
nice.
Tank,
Ooh,
and that was
sick.
Also on the hardest difficulty, and that felt pretty strong. Definitely stronger than the sign build. But yeah, I was basically a pyromaniac. Like I ran around burning people, shouting for someone to play Gwent to. That was how I was imagining it, right? I want to play Gwent. Do you play Gwent? Okay, burn.
It's awesome that Geralt is such a well-developed character because a lot of games have the schizophrenia problem. Yeah. And I realized that and this is going to be super embarrassing, but I had a period in 2015 where I was in Scotland doing an exchange semester, and I had nothing to do, dude. I had like 3 classes a week. So I figured I'm going to install Skyrim again, since that was right around the time when I was starting a very long D&D campaign, and I wanted to learn how to roleplay better. So, and my dad loves giving me notebooks that I never use, but I had them in my luggage, right? So I installed Skyrim. It took like 2 minutes because the internet there was insane. As I was downloading mods, I just start writing down a backstory for the character, and I very quickly realized that I would have to use my extensive knowledge of Skyrim to circumvent some of the quests, because objectively, if you're trying to roleplay it and you do every single quest, the Dragonborn is an insane person. You're the best magic man. You're a valorous knight. Also, you're a paid killer.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, You're actually saying the words out of my mouth in a wonderful synergy, because Skyrim is actually number 2 on my list.
Nice. Yes.
Yeah, so that's a wonderful transition. And talking about hired killer, my Skyrim build was this never seen assassin. The only thing you saw was his arrows.
Nice. Stealth archer is the only way to play.
Yeah. So, but Skyrim is wonderful, and it's a wonderful game. And the third one is actually Fallout New Vegas.
No, hell yes.
Yeah. The Fallout franchise means a lot to me. I would say it actually still does, but it's changed, obviously, a lot. And before that, it also changed. But New Vegas is a game that meant a lot to me. And actually, being primarily fantasy-focused, Fallout is one of the few... I would say not the only one, but one of the few franchises who brought me outside that genre. And it didn't bring me the same amount of tears and chills that Witcher brought me, but it is a wonderful game. I would say good stories is in all these 3 games for me, and that's very important for me. I have spent a lot of time on MMORPGs, but the ones on my list tends to be the one with me canceling out all noise and playing a game like I would read a book, and just embracing the story.
There's been, especially in the past couple of years, a rise in what people colloquially refer to as the walking simulator and games adjacent to that. Do you have any favorites from that just sort of subgenre? I'm curious.
Do I have any favorites? I don't know.
I mean, let me make it just easier. I'm envisioning things like Firewatch, Life is Strange, things of that nature that are very heavily focused on narrative.
Firewatch. I actually forgot about the game, which is a sin, because that's not a game you should forget about. That's a game with a very unique experience. I wouldn't put it on a list because I would never play it again, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But that was a unique experience, and that's actually something. So I guess that's maybe the one, because it didn't feel. Oh my God, it's true. You were walking a lot. You were basically I guess climbing and jumping.
Yeah.
But that game gave me chills, and I still have, there's so much things that feels unresolved, even though it is resolved in the end. Okay, I won't spoil, I guess.
It is very immersive. In the same vein, just to round this out and the focus on games, one of the most perfect intersections of gameplay and narrative I've ever experienced is Outer Wilds, which came out a couple of years ago. It is, I'm not exaggerating here, one of the greatest video games ever made. It takes around 10 to 12 hours to finish. I'm not going to spoil anything about it. It's just, let me give you a broad overview. It takes place in a solar system, and you have a spaceship. It's a tiny solar system, and you have to resolve the mystery of what is happening in that solar system. There's something that happens on a timer, and you need to find out what that is, why it's happening, and along the way you discover, the previous inhabitants of that solar system. You discover a lot about the culture you're from, and it is sublime.
That sounds like something I should... I have to go now. Sorry, can't do it.
Steam sale soon! It is incredible, truly. So I would
that sounds like something I'm going to check out.
Absolutely.
When I'm done working.
Wink. No wink. Yeah. We are constantly busy. Don't even assume, everybody.
I'm not done working, of course. That's not a thing.
Believe it or not, this is work. So
the community never sleeps, right?
So let's sort of roll into the next question. What is your longest gaming session?
And thank you for that suggestion, by the way.
It's awesome.
Well, as an esports competitor, I guess ex-esports competitor, though I try to stay competitive, especially in the card games that doesn't require my mechanics to be what they once were, right? So I have been to LAN events, I've been to tournaments and parties, and I don't have track of it, but some of them, especially in the early ages of Hearthstone, when the competition wasn't as refined as it then was before it got unrefined again. No shots fired. But there was a lot of tournaments where it was not prioritized in the events. So sometimes it was all through the night. You have to play the tournament, high stakes. So there have been some events, especially related to Hearthstone, where I've just... There can also be some waiting time in Hearthstone, and you have committed your decks, and you are starting to second guess, and you're just waiting there, trying to, should you drink energy drink, should not drink energy drink, should go out and do an exercise, do a walk, when is your opponent ready? Sometimes if you go all through the winner bracket and the loser bracket is taking a lot of time, you have a lot of waiting time, and when you have this final of the winner bracket, for example, against the winner of the loser bracket coming up, sometimes that person feels so energized and you've just been sitting there waiting. I'm talking like I always took the winner bracket. I guess I usually took the loser brackets route, but sometimes there was all this waiting. So that's been some long tournaments there. Mm-hmm. But I think an honorary member is actually Dungeons and Dragons for me, and I don't think we've touched it.
That's coming up. That's coming up.
Yeah, that's coming. I played Dungeons and Dragons for, I guess I say since I could talk, but that's not correct because I didn't start talking when I was 8 years old. But, but I've maybe played Dungeons and Dragons since I was like 7, 8 years old. And I have Dungeon Mastered for just as long. Because I guess some would know this feeling like you're in a group, somebody has a Dungeon Master, people point at you. That's a role that's set for life, right?
Yeah.
So, but
been there.
We have this crazy... Yeah, exactly. And you're like, hey, you can also... Remember, guys, all of you, feel free to pitch in. I would love to play in your worlds. And they're like, you're doing fine.
Every time.
Yeah.
Oh, this hurts the soul.
And, okay, guys, that's cool. Someday, one of you will have to take over, though. I keep saying that, at least for some time. But I love it, though. We have the group I'm in now. We have crazy habits of playing Dungeons and Dragons for insanely inhuman Cthulhu-like long durations of time, where our minds get muddled and they do mistakes and I do mistakes and it's crazy. And and we've done that before, where we have gone to vacation houses and just played for a whole weekend, few hours of sleep, some cooking, and then just play Dungeons and Dragons, and it's crazy. It's I don't know if I can recommend it because it's really tough, both for the players, but also on me as a DM. But I guess that would have to be the one I choose. It's so tough, my wife is always like, "Why do you do it? It's so tough. You are ruined for weeks to come after such a weekend." But I'm like, but my soul is energized. My soul needs it.
It's so goddamn rewarding. It is definitely not something newish players should do, and this is a good place to announce that we are definitely doing a D&D podcast sequel. Because you are such a wealth of knowledge, I cannot wait. But yeah, that's...
Looking forward to that.
Mm-hmm, I have been in a similar spot, not as long, but we have barricaded ourselves into a house and just played for hours on end, and it is exhausting, especially if you take it as seriously as we do. Holding character for that long can get draining, and I had a Shakespearean moment where a character actually died, and character got up and just started yelling at the cleric to bring him back, and he just kept yelling at me that he couldn't, and it was beautiful. We almost got into a fist fight. It was insane.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Serious business.
Well, it is serious business, right? And that's the thing. Even when it's not serious, it's still serious. Like at least if you do role playing in that aspect. So, and that sounds like you do as well. It's
You need to be invested into it. I mean, I just in the fist fight. I would never. I love those people. Yeah. And I would never get into a fight with them. Don't do it, kids. Do not beat up your D&D buddies. You're not going to find any new ones. Trust me, it's really difficult.
No, but there are similar situations, right? Some player just really gets into it and he slams the hand into the table and coffee marks just go rolling and characters fall down. But it's because he's invested, right? He's not angry. We had this player a couple of weeks ago and he just was so excited. He slammed his fist into the table.
Nice.
It was crazy. I've also had a player that was actually a new thing for me. I've had a player crying. I've had players crying. it should be mentioned for a good reason, not for me making them cry, I guess, only through the story. But I've had players crying like after a campaign, like talking about things, or like when you're out partying and you talk about these things, because you should definitely talk about Dungeons and Dragons when you're partying, right? But I actually had a player crying when we were role playing a funeral moment for me in game. As his character was crying, he started crying, and that was a new thing for me. That really touched me. I was like, wow. Yeah, that was serene.
That is powerful stuff.
Yeah.
Well, what role-playing games or tabletop games do you actually play? Apart from D&D, of course.
Yeah, D&D is a major thing. I've actually had a competitor, so let's start there, to D&D for some time. And when I say competitor, it's not going to substitute D&D, because I don't think that's ever going to happen, right? Because I also have a lot of homebrew rules, and D&D for me, and I guess a lot of these old groups have, like, we have defined D&D for ourselves. But Vampire the Masquerade.
Oh, hell
and if
yeah.
you don't know it, you should check it out. As I have grown older, and my soul has grown older, I found such a passion for this fascinating piece of role-playing game. It's so personal, and it's horror, but it's personal horror and political, and you can make D&D like Vampire the Masquerade if you roleplay a lot and if you are personal about it. But D&D at its core is board game like in some aspects, and that's fine with D&D. You always sometimes have these two modes, like you have role-playing and you have when you get into combat.
Yeah.
And really good role-players will take role-playing with them into combat, right? And that's amazing. But in Vampire the Masquerade, it's the same thing. Like, combat and role-playing is the same thing, and there's no transition. It's amazing. Then I have a big love for Cthulhu and all Lovecraftian things, yes. And destroying my players' minds with it.
Of course, the character meat grinder.
Yeah. And then Aliens, actually. I like the Aliens, like Ridley. The Aliens movies, playing games in that universe is actually something I've picked up, which I actually also
Nice.
love. Yeah.
Hell yeah.
And another way to ruin my players' minds and souls. And get them really scared.
Have you had players in a Call of Cthulhu game make characters specifically to kill Cthulhu? Has that happened?
In my normal games, I actually wouldn't say this happened directly, but we played once a version of it that's called Pulp Cthulhu. Where it's like action Cthulhu, and we we only played it once because it was a bit weird. But they made characters to actually nuke Cthulhu from orbit, or whatever you say. Yeah.
Of
found
course.
out that didn't really work.
Yeah, that's the thing. You can't, but hey, they're gonna try. I've heard so many convoluted stories, mostly from one person, who just had players come in with, which is the most contrived garbage since, the mythos takes place in the early 20th century.
Yeah.
So people just went with, I was in the army, I have all this ordnance, look at these 5 RPGs I have. Like,
and it's not gonna help you.
You can try, you can blow some chunks off of them, but the soup man at the bottom of the ocean is gonna grow him back and eat your soul.
But like, even though like fighting humans in Cthulhu, like I brought my D&D players in, and they were like already a bit scared of the HP pool, right? And then when they got into a fight with some random dude, and he just fired a shot at them, and one of them almost died, he was like, "Oh, this is lethal."
Yep.
And I was like, "Yeah."
Oh, the stakes. Woo, the stakes.
Wait, we have to think about before we fight people?
It's a bit like a Shadowrun.
Yeah, and I've actually played that as well. That's also some... But yeah, I don't know, in D&D, this amazing thing is that you are pretty weak in the beginning, but you become these demigods, right? And that's part of the story, at least if that's the story you choose to tell. But in Cthulhu and in Vampire, it's very much the opposite.
Yeah.
Actually, Vampire is a funny thing, because you are strong, but there's always a bigger predator in the pond, right? There's always a bigger fish in Vampire the Masquerade.
Nice.
Yeah. So you feel weak sometimes, actually.
It's awesome. I do enjoy the limitations of those settings, or the perceived limitations. I haven't actually played much in those, but I like that you have to approach it very much cerebrally and not just try and, bash your way through everything, because usually it doesn't work, because the characters are human adjacent, let's call it. Not in vampire, really, because that's, it's in the name,
But it's also this like fighting the beast, and it's the thing about, I guess that's why it's similar to Cthulhu. It's like a game that you cannot win, but you can prolong it, right?
Yes.
And that's actually, that goes for vampire as well, because this hunger is a battle you cannot win. Ultimately, you will lose at some point, right? Or at least it will be an infinite battle. I guess there are some aspects of lore in the universe of Vampire the Masquerade where there maybe are some chances of winning, but it's out there.
You gotta finagle real bad for that to happen.
Yeah.
So what is your fondest gaming memory then? Is it video game related? Is it tabletop related?
I would say it is tabletop related, because there are some moments in that cannot be bested, even sometimes by real by real life things happening. Like there are some things, and I guess, why do I say like that? D&D is real. There are some things that happens in Dungeons and Dragons and tabletop that just stays with you. And the thing that really, I guess, stays with me is that when I have these people like here in my home or we're somewhere else, there are so many things we can talk about, right? We could talk about school, like university. We could talk about esports and games, but they often always circle back to these D&D moments. And sometimes some of these players remember moments that I don't even remember, and it's obvious that it meant so much to them. And sometimes I find myself just like an old man sitting in my chair, just looking at these players, just circling back around stories, and I'm like, this is what life is about, right?
Hell yes. Any this again will be a teaser, because this is one of the questions that are going to be asked in the D&D cast. But any moment you can pick out to just tell a quick story about how that went down.
I would say the funeral, where, just because that's on my mind, where one of my old friends from life started crying, was it's a recent one, but it's a powerful one for me, because I've never experienced that. And I was like putting this music on, and I was narrating how the funeral went on, and the honorary members of the funeral, the parents and people from this now dead player's clan, and his mother was singing in this natural native language of theirs, and there was this fey creature from the Feywild that summoned the sun and did something, and there was a lot of these things, and some of the players who wasn't really involved were keeping in the background, because it was actually a recent party. It was like the first death of a party is really when the story starts going crazy, right? The first that's what I used to say anyway. The first death in a new campaign is crazy. That's when a lot of the players starts thinking, oh, this is serious. And also off game, the player starts thinking, oh, the dungeon master is not afraid to kill us. But that moment is something that stays with me. But I would say finishing my old campaign and all the small things that followed there is something that stays within my memory. Especially the characters saying goodbye to each other, and and also some of the characters who like started thinking about like there was this NPC that I flirted around with. Should I approach her, like start a life with her? Or also some of the NPCs who there were actually two of the players who they weren't romantically involved, but they were such good friends that they just decided to venture into an unknown realm, and not necessarily to fight, and then just live the rest of their life together. These friends, and it was crazy. Okay, I'm almost starting like.
You took me through. I got goosebumps, and you took me through a whole gamut of emotions. I mean, if this is anything to go by, I'm firmly convinced that the community is in safe hands. If that level of passion is something you can cultivate, that I am 100% excited and cool with you coming on board and just flexing those storytelling muscles. And that's the podcast. This is everything we had to go through. So thank you, Thor, for taking the time to participate, to tell those stories, and to let the people know who you are a bit more.
Thank you. So emotional right now.
Yeah. He's going to be a very frequent guest on the podcast, everybody. So look forward to more of these moments where we, through this shared experience, almost cry. So yeah, thank you once again for coming on the podcast. Thank you everybody for listening, and we will catch you next time. Goodbye, everybody. Hey you made it to the end. Congratulations! That must mean you like us enough to want more, right? Well, good news! We're all over the internet. Go to embersword.com and subscribe to our newsletter for a chance to play the game early, as well as the latest interesting tidbits on the game and the team. Join our lovely Discord community over at discord.gg/embersword. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook at PlayEmberSword for regular updates on what we're up to. And remember the basics. Drink water, be kind to each other, and spread the word about Ember Sword.